And thank you, everybody. Welcome back. If you did not join us last week, you are more than welcome to just start where we are tonight and catch up. I am Jen Wilshaw. I have been blessed to be part of Westside's community for the last 12 years. I teach the Safe on Your Feet classes that take place there Tuesdays and Thursdays, also chair yoga on Saturdays, and wellness is my love, but Jesus is my love first, and it's a joy to combine them, hence my company name, Higher Fitness and Wellness. So tonight we are going to conclude our journey together on brain health. It's Boost Your Brain Health Part 2. And we began our brain boosting adventure last week with a foundation of empirical facts, some tough statistics, and while truthful, perhaps some overwhelming answers to the most common questions and concerns about brain health. We also learned that responsible research asserts that Alzheimer's and dementia are not normal parts of the aging process. Rather, they are protective responses of the brain against a bad environment. In fact, brain disease has far less to do with age and genetics, and much more to do with whether our lifestyle habits and choices are nourishing our brains in health or kind of bathing them in toxicity. Finally, as more than 85% of all disease processes, including cognitive decline, are due to lifestyle, not to genetics, this means that we have a voice and more than a choice in how our brains function and age. And tonight we are going to assume that amazing responsibility and learn how to nurture our brains back to the divine health that God intended. So I want to introduce to you Noggin. He's my brain model. And this is Noggin. And he's a little bit shy, but he agreed to be here tonight. And he is divine. He is so complex. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. How can we nurture Noggin? So while Noggin is only 2% of our body weight or our body mass, weighing a mere 3 pounds, he is the most high maintenance and voracious organ in the body, consuming about 20% of our energy needs or our caloric needs, 20% at a mere 3 pounds. Now, this makes sense when we get to understand and learn the massive undertaking or undertakings of Noggin's job description. Let's recall from last week that Noggin is always firing. He's always firing his 500 trillion plus synapses. Recall that those are like little communication engines, and he fires those in order for us to thrive, to grow, and to reverse any existing cognitive decline. This makes Noggin the command center of the body, not only in charge of sustaining homeostasis or a stable, healthy environment, but he's also in charge of managing balance, movement, complex thinking and learning, memories, emotions, recall, reflexes, sleep cycles, sensory awareness, and stress responses all at the same time, all at once. Now, Noggin is neuroplastic. And if you'll recall from last week, that means that Noggin is exceptionally malleable or moldable. He's constantly rewiring and reshaping himself throughout the lifetime based on experiences, thoughts, and the movement, nutrition, and sleep habits to which he is exposed. In other words, Noggin's health and longevity are in our hands. Our hands. He can grow and thrive, or he can atrophy, waste away, and die, regardless of age or genetics. So that's Noggin. He'll come back. So what does Noggin require from us in order to remain the most dynamic organ of the body. First thing, varied fitness and tons of frequent movement throughout the day, each and every day. Varied fitness and tons of frequent movement. So one of the largest oversights of the human body comes from the widely accepted misunderstanding that the brain and the body are separate entities versus two parts of the same whole that directly impact each other. We consider noggin to be like this empty vessel that floats around and has thoughts, but is not related to our balance or our coordination or to the muscles of our arms and legs, but it is the brain. The brain is what moves the body. It all starts here. The brain is what moves the body, and the body is what nourishes the brain. So they are profoundly interconnected. As a fitness professional, I have learned how amazingly well movement provides a window to the brain. While I am not a neurologist, I am not a doctor of any kind, I can observe an individual's movement patterns to determine where he or she might be having areas of brain decline. For example, difficulty keeping balance while walking, if you kind of sway and stray all over the place, we call that dynamic balance. So if you have difficulty sustaining balance while walking, that can indicate challenges with planning complex tasks or visual spatial reasoning. Movement is how the brain works. It is miracle grow for the brain. Before modern transportation and technology, movement was the backbone of society. It was required for survival, right? It was how we got our food and found shelter, and how we generated and supported family with movement, lots and lots of movement. However, as we continually remove movement and become more sedentary, the brain suffers. Deprived of the circulation, see how all those red vessels, deprived of the circulation, neural pathway development, and hormone regulation that only movement can supply, the brain will waste away and remold itself into a tiny vessel for basic thought. This leads not only to deficits in complex reasoning and memory, but also to declines in muscular strength, mobility, walking speed, the speed at which you can walk, balance, coordination, proprioception. In other words, it diminishes your brain's ability to know where you are in space. That's proprioception. And it also deprives us of writing reactions to prevent falls. So in other words, if we trip over a curb, we hope our body writes that reaction. It stimulates responses to prevent the fall. But if we end up falling, then the writing reaction wasn't implemented very well. And so when the brain starts to atrophy or decline, we'll see all of that diminished function as well. Now, you may recall from my three-part series, Aligned Well and New in 2022, that I discussed at length the value of a lot of frequent movement. While 30 minutes of exercise is great, an hour of purposeful exercise is wonderful, if we still have hours of sitting behavior surrounding that 30 minutes of exercise or that 1 hour of exercise, then we're still considered pretty sedentary, posing harm to our health and to our brains. Do you remember the switch method I taught you back in Aligned Well and New? I'm not going to review it. I'm just going to use it as something to sustain what I'm about to say. The switch method was an acronym I taught you. to allow you to experience better whole body health and more frequent movement throughout the day. So the S stood for stand more, sit less, but stand and sit better. The W stood for walk for 3 minutes every 30 minutes, or for 6 minutes every hour with no tech in hand. The I stood for interval training your eyes, which is very important for the brain because it turns out that brain and eye development work together, right? The T stood for tend to your tech neck, or that forward head posture, because when we assume that posture, it deprives the brain of circulation. Those were strategies and to offer more frequent movement, and they're very sneaky but powerful ways to break up our seated tendencies and minimize the dangers correlated with them. Other ways to put more frequent movement into our lives: walk instead of drive, if that's possible. Just walk more. Seek active chores like gardening, vacuuming. Sit differently when you do have to sit. So instead of sitting in the classic 90-degree bend at the hips and the knees, change how you sit. Change how you sit. Cross a leg over, like when you're sitting, try that. Break up in other words, give variety to the way that you sit. That makes a big difference. So we want to find for the brain more frequent ways to move. Break up the seated cycles, move as much as we can, remembering what we went over in that switch method. And you don't have to remember it perfectly. It's just move as much as you can. Move as much as you can and minimize the sitting. As far as fitness is purposeful exercise. I encourage regular, mindful exercise or fitness. Now, regular means exercising consistently, say 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 to 7 days per week. Don't freak out. The key is to just do some duration of something almost every day. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, 10 minutes in the evening. It all adds up. So that's what I mean by regular, consistent fitness. Mindful fitness means that we're selecting formats of fitness that engage the whole brain while moving. So, for instance, walking on a treadmill or riding a stationary bicycle in front of the TV provides greater benefit than just sitting on the couch, but it's mindless, right? You're kind of zoning out. You're just walking and biking and honing in on the TV. Your brain is barely participating because such modalities of movement are way too familiar and predictable. There's not a lot of brain activity going on. A better option, doesn't mean you have to do it, but a better option would be walking or biking outside. You're on unpredictable, varied terrain. The brain demands visual spatial reasoning. It demands balance. You don't have a machine holding you up. It demands more coordination. It demands more proprioception or an awareness of where you are in space. You have to focus on where you are in space to avoid obstacles, hindrances, other people, falls. That's mindful exercise. Now, if outdoor exercises and outdoor endeavors are not possible, how about an online yoga program? Yoga, even if it's chair yoga. Chair yoga doesn't mean you have to sit for the whole thing. Chair yoga means you're using the chair as a prop to assist you into various postures. But that's a wonderful format to challenge your brain, challenges your balance. Where are you in space? Coordinating arms and legs. Or how about a very gentle weight training DVD? Something that engages your brain in an alternate way, different from the usual. How about getting out of the house for a group exercise class on land or in the water? Water aerobics, wonderful. Wonderful. The benefit of such classes are numerous. They offer social interaction, which we will discover Noggin loves, and they challenge the body through 3 planes of motion with simultaneous arm and leg actions that are new and familiar, right? So this is why dance classes are so wonderful. There's something to learn. There are some steps to learn. There's a little bit of choreography to learn while you're moving. And learning new things is 50% more effective for the brain when it's coupled with movement. So maybe you don't want to do a dance class. If you're outside for a walk and listening to a really educational podcast, something new you're learning, it's 50% more effective for the brain because you're learning that podcast while you're moving, physically moving. Please know that getting our feet on the ground, a weight-bearing exercise, that's what weight-bearing is. Weight-bearing doesn't mean sitting in a chair and lifting weights. Weight-bearing means having your feet on the ground and having you hold your body weight up. Getting our feet on the ground with weight-bearing exercise stimulates the growth of new brain cells. It's also essential for strong bones. But the foot's impact on the ground increases blood supply to the brain. So if you currently exercise seated or on a machine that holds your feet in place, which would also constitute an elliptical. So on an elliptical, you're not sitting, but your feet are stuck on pedals. They barely move. The pedals are moving for you. Try mixing your exercise up and just making it a little bit more nutritious for your body and your brain by getting your feet on the ground. Okay. And finally, as it pertains to fitness, and as per boundless fitness research indicates, as does the wisdom of Dr. Daniel Amen, break a sweat every now and again. It's healthy for the body and the mind to experience some brief but vigorous bursts of effort. You may have read, there's a lot on brain health lately. It's really out there. And you may have heard of HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Capital H, capital I, capital T, high intensity interval training. That takes whatever exercise format you're engaging in, and very loosely you format little bursts into it, brief bursts of vigorous activity. So if you can do this out walking. You could do it on a treadmill. You're walking at your normal clip for 30 seconds, a minute and a half, whatever you can sustain. Burst it. It doesn't mean you have to run. It doesn't mean you have to jog. Walk a little faster than you normally would. Maybe add an incline or a hill to your repertoire. Do something that makes you get a little bit huffy and puffy and break a sweat. And try to insert some of those bursts several times throughout the workout. Doesn't have to be super complicated or technical. Just try to insert some increased bouts of intensity. That's your burst training, your HIIT training, and the brain loves it. Okay. The second thing Noggin needs. He cares very specifically about what foods he eats, what foods we feed him. And specifically, he likes those foods correlated with the mind diet. Capital M, capital I, capital N, capital D, mind diet. The mind diet stands for Mediterranean Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. That's what MIND stands for. Mediterranean Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. The MIND diet is a hybrid of 2 very prominent and reputable diets, the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So basically, we're saying it's the Mediterranean diet coupled with a blood pressure friendly diet, the DASH diet. That's what makes up the MIND diet. And it was developed after a myriad of studies at the National Institute of Aging repeatedly demonstrated that people who ate more mind diet foods experience significantly lower occurrences of Alzheimer's. To be specific, rigid adherence to the mind diet, rigid, like really doing it, amping it up and being on your game, reduced the risk of Alzheimer's by 53%. While a moderate approach, a kind of a more flexible approach, you're trying your best, but every now and again you deviate, that still reduced Alzheimer's by 35%, which is pretty impressive. Research also suggests that the mind diet may influence Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis in the same ways, which is really interesting. The mind diet basically encourages and discourages certain things. 10 things that the mind diet suggests predominating in your diet. It's not going to be shocking. 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Vary it. I can assure you, diabetics, of course, you have to follow your doctor's orders. I've studied a lot of this, but I'm not a dietitian. I can assure you that people are not becoming diabetic and overweight because they're overdoing it on fresh fruit. Just something to think about. That's not it. Fruit juices, you want to avoid, but 8 to 10 servings of varied fruits and vegetables each day. The next thing that this diet advocates is a very heavy intake of green leafy vegetables, whether it's romaine lettuce or cooked spinach. Heavy intake of your green leafy vegetables, because if you ingest a lot of green leafy vegetables, it is correlated with having the cognitive function of someone 11 years your junior. They're potent. Greens are potent. The next thing we want to incorporate on the mind diet, water. I'm going to get into that in a second, a little bit more, but 60, not me. I mean, I agree with it, but it's not coming from me. 64 ounces of water a day, 8 8-ounce glasses. Nuts, Brazil nuts, walnuts, almonds, but a quarter cup. That's not a lot. I take almonds every day and I do measure them out, a quarter cup. It's very different from just having the bag and okay. So we want nuts in the diet, but nuts are highly caloric and they have a lot of fat, good fat, but they're highly caloric. They're very calorically dense. So a quarter cup. Beans. Whole grains. Fish and poultry. Yogurt and kefir. Olive oil. And dry red wine, 1 5-ounce glass. Dry red wine. That's what a mind diet favors. What it discourages, not going to be shocking, red meat, butter and margarines. There's a big argument, butter, margarine, what's butter and margarines, cheese, I'm sorry, pastries and sweets, fried foods, fast foods, and many fast foods are fried, and excessive alcohol, which is defined for a lady as more than 1 drink a day, and for men, more than 2 beverages a day. If you have the APOE4 gene, we talked about that last week. If you have the APOE4 gene, you should stop drinking alcohol altogether, according to the research, not Jen's rules, according to all the research. It's the mind diet. Now, before I finish up diet, I do want to mention one thing that I will openly admit is a huge challenge for me. Noggin appreciates it very much when we chew our foods thoroughly and slowly. It's not only our arms and our legs and our torsos and our bums that need exercise. The muscular action of chewing, known as masticating food, mastication, it preserves hippocampus function. That's the memory and learning areas of the brain. Chewing your foods slowly. Chewing food slowly and adequately also prevents leaky gut. We talked about that last week because leaky gut correlates with leaky brain. Just a reminder, leaky gut is when the lining of the gut has cracks or holes that permit partially undigested foods and toxins into the bloodstream and then to penetrate the brain. Friends, digestion begins in our mouths, not down here. Digestion begins in the mouth by chewing our foods slowly and adequately, completely. And if we do that, it will limit the amount of undigested particles floating around and irritating the gut lining. It's a tough one, I know. If you're somebody who has struggled with eating disorders of any kind, chewing food slowly can be tough. All right, so we talked about fitness, mindful fitness, lots of frequent movement, the mind diet. The next thing Noggin needs is responsible supplementation and hydration. While we learned that the mind diet has proven highly effective in retarding cognitive decline, sound research contends that even the most nutritious foods have their limits. Regrettably, modern farming methods that strip the soil of critical nutrients, coupled with our enormous intake of processed foods, make it virtually impossible for food alone to support the complex functions of the brain, the nervous system, and even the immune system. So how do we effectually bridge the gap between what we eat, what we don't eat, with what our bodies truly require for abundant health? And that's where responsible supplementation comes in. And I keep emphasizing responsible because there's a lot of irresponsible supplementation out there. Supplementation is not a regulated industry. It's not regulated. But it doesn't mean it's all bad. And supplementation is a topic all on its own, so I'm going to keep it brief. The lacking nutrients. I saw somebody in the chat, how many servings of green leafy vegetables? Tons. Just overdo it. We need 8 to 12 of the fruits and vegetables, or 8 to 14, or 8 to 10. Overdo it. Eat it, eat it, eat it. The lacking nutrients correlated with anxiety, depression, brain fog, forgetfulness, and all forms of Alzheimer's and dementia are as follows. Water. Water is a nutrient. The brain, poor noggin, is 75% water. Some experts say 80%, but what does it matter? 75 to 80% water. It cannot function without adequate hydration. And that constitutes 64 ounces of water a day, or half our body weight in fluid ounces. People really push back on this big time. I can't do that. That can't be right. I don't have time. I'll be in the bathroom all day. I'm on 96 ounces today. I'm in the bathroom all day. It's healthy. It's good for your kidneys. It's what we're supposed to do. I know it may not be convenient, but that's what our brains need. Magnesium, magnesium. Potassium. These are the lacking nutrients: water, magnesium, potassium, vitamin D3. Folic acid, that would include folate or folacin. Vitamin B12. And omega-3 fatty acids. Your omega-3 fatty acids. Thanks, Liz. So those are the lacking nutrients. And when they scan brains, all of this is lacking when they check all kinds of cognitive decline. Lacking chemicals, this is different. Lacking chemicals in the brain, in the brains of those with any kind of cognitive decline, even as minor as brain fog, and brain fog actually is not that minor, all the way up to Alzheimer's and dementia. Serotonin. Serotonin is a lacking chemical in the brain of those struggling with anxiety, depression, brain fog, forgetfulness. Dopamine. Glutamate, Glutamate, glutamate. One is, I know nothing about this. Capital G, capital A, capital B as in boy, capital A, GABA. GABA is a lacking chemical. And then there's also noradrenaline and norepinephrine. There tend to be some imbalances there too, but these are the biggies. Okay, those of you who are wondering about brain supplements, they're all over the news, they're all over TV. I take my own kinds of supplements. I believe, again, in responsible supplementation. Prevagen is quite reputable. Prevagen. I have my husband on Prevagen now. There are 2 doses. You'll see that in the pharmacy. It's an over-the-counter supplement for healthy brain function, and it gets quite good reviews. Prevagen. Yep. There's like a basic level and an extra strength. It's costly, but I'd rather pay for that than health problems. All right. The next thing that Noggin is desperate for, poor guy, he's so complicated. But when I was getting ready for my presentation, I was examining him and I tripped over him and he opened up and I had to put all his parts back together. It took me like a half hour. Terrible. These are the motor centers, the green areas that control your motor. And Noggin is desperate for at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. At least 7 to 8. Dr. Amen, and I will quote him in a minute, says 7 to 9. Friends, sleep is where all your recovery, where my recovery, it's where all recovery takes place. You can't just lie on the couch and recover. The brain needs sleep, deep, deep, deep restorative sleep. If we do not sleep well, we do not recover well. And this means that emotional stresses remain in the body, causing inflammation. It also means that we do not gain the benefits accrued to exercise. That is, we actually lose muscle tissue, we lose muscular strength and muscular endurance, and we also suffer with compromised balance. Big time. Sleep and exercise go hand in hand, especially when it comes to the brain. Wait, this is unbelievable. This is so encouraging. Do you remember last week when I talked about proteins in the brains of Alzheimer's and dementia patients? There are lots of proteins called amyloid proteins, and they just surround all the brain cells. It's not good. It's protein accumulation. It's found in anyone with severe cognitive decline. Physical exercise loosens those amyloid proteins, those plaques. It loosens them, it nudges them, much like regular exercise nudges the cholesterol in the body and flushes it out. It loosens those amyloid plaques, and sleep encourages their disposal. So you can't have one, it's not going to all happen without both. The physical exercise loosens those plaques, but it is in sleep that we dispose of them. And that protects against cognitive decline. And this research is confirmed by Weill Cornell. This is research confirmed by Weill Cornell. And Dr. Daniel Amen states the following: get a solid 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. I'm quoting. Sleep issues like chronic insomnia or sleep apnea, we talked about that last week as a risk factor, kill brain cells. Chronic insomnia, sleep apnea, really unhealthy for the brain. And finally, as it pertains to sleep, brain researchers also agree that smartphones and other tech devices be removed from the bedroom. Their blue light inhibits the release of melatonin. And melatonin is a sleep hormone. So all that tech stuff, I know people who sleep with their phone. Get it out. Get it. Not only is it radiation, but that blue light really creates a problem for sleep, deep restorative sleep. All right, so mindful exercise, frequent movement, the mind diet, hydration, responsible supplementation, sleep. The next thing Noggin needs, he wants us to know, Noggin is a social critter. He is a social critter that wants fellowship with other brains and a connection to a higher power. Isolation is not good. COVID taught us that. We need friends. We need connection. Noggin is also very dependent, and this isn't it's what I believe, but it's not my research. Noggin is very dependent on God. He's dependent on God, on people, and prayer. According to Dr. Caroline Leaf, L-E-A-F, she's a cognitive neuroscientist and a best-selling author, all kinds of wonderful books on brain health. Noggin is at his highest intellectual state when praying, because prayer changes the infrastructure of the brain. Prayer is also a stress management and brain boosting tool. Even a few minutes a day shows a reduction in stress, deadly inflammation, depression, anxiety, and improvement in memory, mood, and gene function. Gene function, how our genes function. So it's like all the more reason to get to church for some healing, prayer, and social interaction. Right, Pastor Liz? I like to go for prayer walks. I started this whole kind of habit during COVID because I was losing my mind. I go for prayer walks. Now, both alone and with others. I talk to God, I give thanks, and I offer him prayer requests. Other times I go for silent prayer walks and I just observe everything around me, handmade by God. In either case, there's no music, there are no podcasts. It's just God and I with weight-bearing exercise, uneven terrain under my feet, interval training for my eyes, right? Changing my focal point, getting far glances, side-eye challenges, fresh air in my lungs, and restorative space for my brain. And before we finish up, Noggin has one final request. Please stop multitasking. It makes him cray-cray. It is a scientific fact that multitasking stresses and damages the brain. The world praises it and job descriptions demand it, but multitasking is lethal. It promotes scattered, poor focus, flawed judgment, and uncompleted tasks. Little piles of stuff just end up all over the place, not finished. It harms reasoning, it harms memory, and it's addictive. It's addictive. Monotasking or single tasking improves focus, accurate judgment, and the correct and creative completion of tasks. It also preserves retention and recall. Monotasking is peaceful and nurturing to the memory centers of the brain because it keeps us in the precious present moment and able to remember our moments. Single tasking is a fine example of healthy neuroplasticity because it teaches us what productivity is and what it's not. This is my definition. Productivity is not doing more in less time. It is discerning what matters most and doing it really well. I want to thank you so much for accompanying me on this healthy brain journey. I hope that I've scattered some expectant seeds of hope in your gardens and that you're ready to get a little bit wet and a little bit dirty, tending to those seeds. Because here's the truth about sowing. It requires a lot of effort, time, and patience. And the enemy of our souls makes life hard for us by making us believe that life should be easy. It takes 3 to 6 months of consistent doing and practicing before good habits take hold, not 21 days. Just get rid of that. That is inaccurate. And then results start slowly blooming. So I want us to stay in it together, and I want us to cling to Galatians 6:9. Let us not grow tired of doing what is good. And just at the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we do not give up. Thank you for giving me a noggin.
Thank you so much. Jen, that is just so helpful and encouraging. Lots of information to think about. I tried to take a few notes so you guys could copy. I think I saw a hand up on somebody who was on a phone. So if you want to, but now I'm missing it. If you do have a question, we do have some time. You can unmute yourself. Because I can't necessarily see everybody. One of the things I wondered about, so many people have sleep issues, and I know that it isn't always because of blue light. It's sometimes hormonal, it's anxiety, it's sometimes we notice this as we're getting older, just the sleep hygiene kind of takes a hit.
Yeah.
So do medications that doctors often give to help sleep, do they counterbalance the brain health?
No. Here's the thing about the sleep thing, because I've had challenges with sleep at various seasons in my life. Melatonin, yes, melatonin is not only the hormone that allows us to sleep. It's not only sensitive to blue light. We do naturally lose melatonin as we age. So yes, there is an age factor. There are a lot of natural supplements out there that are not dangerous and that work. Try melatonin. I mean, I'm not prescribing, chat with your doc, but when it comes to doing whatever you have to do to get your rest, get it? Because the damage that's all the doctors, Dr. Amen, the damage that chronic insomnia creates is far more lethal than you're having to take support in the form of a pill. We're so, and I understand we tend to be so, nope, but I have a friend who struggles horribly for decades with insomnia, and it's terrible. She went to a sleep specialist, and his words were, "You have got to change this dynamic." He gave her marijuana to take. That was, one course of action. Of course, we learned last week marijuana is not great. You have to talk to a responsible health professional, but at all costs, sleep.
Okay. Yeah. So also, because we're a community outreach, not all of our friends are considering themselves religious or participants in a church, but the prayer piece, would you say that meditation would be similar?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you said prayer, it's some form of
meditation.
Okay.
So prayer is like my go-to, but there are, meditation is just, as we all know, it's not necessarily worshiping a certain thing or one God. Whatever you place your mind on, your focus on, your heart upon, meditation is absolutely included in that.
Okay. And then, because you mentioned also gratitude, which is something that I think you added in there as being also beneficial, which anybody could offer gratitude.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I highly encourage gratitude journals. They're awesome.
Okay. Tim is saying that a psychiatrist told him one of the best things a person can do for an aging brain is learn a second language, as you would use the areas of the brain that you haven't used in your youth. That's interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a ton of stuff. Jigsaw puzzles, all the brain games, learning a new language, learning anything new. And as I noted in the presentation, the learning simply becomes 50% more effective when you're moving with it.
Okay.
Well, Tim, you are absolutely right. I will say very politely, sleep has to happen. Otherwise, you're not going to have the capacity to learn new language. But learning new things, 100% correct. But the biggies I wanted to really hone in on tonight, because it's undisputed.
Okay. So the exercise.
Exercise, we are sitting too much. It's killing us.
Okay. Somebody had asked a question about that they drink cranberry juice, which is good for their kidneys, but it doesn't water. The liquid of water, would that be herbal tea, or is it just straight up only water to get our 64 ounces?
You can rely on other things. As far as the cranberry juice, yeah, it's great for urinary health. Just watch the sugar. Maybe it's sugar-free, or dilute that in some water. You can, I'll be honest, I hate plain water. For me to get my water in, I have organic lemons and I squeeze a ton in. That is what I do. And lemons, while they're acidic to the tongue, internally they're alkaline. So they help get rid of inflammation. But yeah, as long as your beverages are not like, soda, if they are decaffeinated, they count. But caffeine does not count in the equation because caffeine dehydrates us. Okay.
Music also is something that we know folks respond to. And we have Beth is suggesting that joining the choir and learning new music helps to keep the mind young. It combines body, mind, and heart. That's right.
An instrument.
Yeah. So that's a direct plug for the West Side Choir, baby. And Debbie, I think, is on the call too. But and I think that there are also, you had mentioned jigsaw puzzles. I believe that you had suggested last week some games or cognitive kind of,
Mhm.
are there any more besides the puzzles that you recommend?
Sudoku, there are a lot of different ones out there. And again, in the Healthy Brain Zone book, there's a massive list of resources
Okay,
in
great.
there. But yeah, it's, I incorporate any of my West Siders who are here. We incorporate in our classes brain games. So we not mindful exercise. So we're engaging our brain. Friends, it really comes down to, especially when it is movement, when it's your life, create variety, find a new way to travel to a certain destination instead of relying on the norm. When folks come to class or you go to church, do you always sit in the same spot? Those things count. We're on automatic pilot. We are just zoning. When folks come to class, they're also polite and cute and they'll say, but that's not my seat. And I said, there are no assigned seats. Sit somewhere new. That's really important. Little things make a difference. Little things make a difference.
Okay, well, that's good. That's something we can all do. So I'm going to move you all around at church on Sunday for those of you who are regular attendees.
Yes.
Anybody, we have a few more minutes. Any other questions? So much to think about, lots to do.
It was superb. You are superb. It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Everything was so good. Just right on the money. Right on. So great. Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Question. I've had too many colds the last several months. I'm trying to figure out how I can build up my resistance so I don't get so many colds. I mean, it's just been going on just like the last couple of months. I've had like maybe 2 or 3 colds, an awful lot. I think my resistance is a little low.
Better see, I would say a physician, huh, Jen? See the physician.
Definitely. Definitely. But I will tell you, here's the wonderful thing about whether we're talking brain health, whether we're talking heart health, whether we're talking weight loss. The very things that are good for keeping a strong immune system are the same things that you need for a healthy brain, a healthy heart, and weight regulation. We make it harder than it should be. Really, like, it's like, oh, my heart, and we go out and we buy, it's all the same, you guys. I'm like the no saleswoman, like it's all the same.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's true. So it's all the things that you have told us. This is an important question that I had wondered myself. Can using these techniques help to reverse dementia in someone who's already showing symptoms?
It's always, and I'm quoting Dr. Bredesen and I'm quoting Dr. Colbert. You can be at any stage of cognitive decline and change it. Does that mean get your loved one back to pre-dementia or pre-Alzheimer's? Nope. But we can slow that trend down. We can slow it down.
True. That's true.
So all of these things to begin to try in whatever way we're able to begin to slow. Okay.
Yep. And that is what we talked about last week with Dr. Colbert. This is a lot, you friends. I mean, like, we should have like meetings to revisit. How are you doing? It can all, it's biblical. All things can be made new. You can absolutely change the trend. You get awfully discouraged because there's this, it's too late. It's too late.
No.
So doing anything is better than doing nothing. And you have often said that to us. Drinking at least half of that water is better than none. Walking for 3 minutes, going up this area, better. Yeah, anything is better
all little
than nothing.
things.
Yeah,
It's all little things. I work with a woman who, I mean, you will be overwhelmed and you will go into analysis paralysis if you look at this and say, oh my gosh, she wants me exercising 5 to 7 days a week and I have to get up every 30 minutes and I have to drink 64 ounces. Blah, blah, blah. You'll hate me. Start small.
Yeah.
It's just progressive. It's just doing a little better than we did today.
Good.
Sounds good. Very encouraging. Well, thank you, Jen, so much. Friends,
Thank you.
again, this will be available on our YouTube in a few days in case you want to review and share it with friends. Next week is in our tradition Ash Wednesday, so we will not have a program, but we invite you to either live stream or participate at our Ash Wednesday service, which will be in the sanctuary at 7:30. The following week will be in person for our very relaxing sonic meditation. It's a sound healing exercise we're going to do, which should be very relaxing. So as you go from this space, it is always our wish that you be well. And again, thank you, Jen, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
excellent.